Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Mike Anthony joining us. Mike, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Michael.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you here today. So, Mike, to start us off, for those who don't know you, just take a moment and explain what you do.
I run a consultancy and training company called Engage Management Consultants. We do marketing and sales consultancy with a focus on marketing at retail for consumer goods companies. In my spare time, I've also set up an online company called shoppermarketingexperts.com. If you want to know more about shopper marketing, you can check that out. And written a book on the topic and do quite a lot of coaching and quite a lot of public speaking too.
Wonderful. Well, I know that, Mike, you've worked with and consulted for over 100 top consumer brands like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Sony, L'Oreal, GSK. I want to learn more about that. But before we do, you're from England originally and you now live in Thailand. So how did that happen?
I'd love to say it was all by plan, but a lot of it was by accident. So I started my career in consumer goods. I started working for a British company called United Biscuits, who, for those of you in the United States, they originally owned the Keebler biscuits and cookies brand a long, long time ago. And I worked with them in the UK. I worked in sales and marketing roles, then looked after markets in Eastern Europe and Southern Africa. And then one day someone said, would you like to come and run marketing for China? Which took me about 10 seconds to have a shot at. I was still pretty young. It was a chance in a lifetime, go and do something, go to China and get paid to do it. So I did, thinking that it would last a little while. It lasted about 3 to 5 years with switches from biscuits to Barbie dolls. I went to work for Nabisco and then on to Mattel. Then I was headhunted by a consultancy, which brought me from China to Bangkok. And that consultancy, I thought again, would be a couple of years journey. I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn consulting and working with some of the biggest names on the planet in consumer goods. And I quite liked it. And I met my future business partner at that company. And in a moment of bravery or stupidity, we decided to set up our own consultancy. And have been here ever since, mainly because it's a good place to be. It's comfortable. It's low cost. And more importantly, my family's happy here.
So just a really interesting story and path and journey that you've been on. Before going off and starting your own consulting company, right? You spent, I think it's about 15 years or more in corporate. You mentioned that you met your business partner at that time and you both started this consulting business. Why did you do that? I mean, why did you leave the corporate world to start your own consulting company?
Very good question, Michael. Very good question. So it was kind of a middle step because I was in a corporate consultancy for 2 years. So I think that gave me a taste of trying something. So I guess there were 2 steps, Michael. The first was trying being a consultant. And that was as a place in my career, having been in in-house corporate roles in sales and marketing for big corporations, having gone out to Asia or been out in Asia for 5 or 6 years by this point, really at a point of considering what I should do next. Do I want to carry on working for large corporates? And literally it was a headhunter out of the blue, came along and said, look, I've got this consultancy. They're based in Bangkok. They have this fantastic client roster. You're suddenly seeing names like Unilever and Nestle and Coca-Cola and people like that. And that could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very much I saw that as a personal learning. The second step, I guess, was then the bigger step in a way of deciding to go on our own. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of that was naivety and ideology. We were working with these clients and recognized that we could see a gap in the market. There was a need that big consumer brands had, our current employer wasn't meeting, and nobody else seemed to be meeting. And based on our experience of having worked in corporates and then consulting to corporates, we knew that there was a big opportunity. There was a gap in the market, and we felt there was an opportunity to fill it. We wanted to do something important, I guess. That was kind of the feeling back 15 years ago. And the other thing for me was starting your own business has risks. This was about as good a time in my life to take that risky journey that I could see. I didn't have any children. I didn't have a mortgage. We were in a relatively low-cost world. And I felt young enough to feel that if this didn't work out, then I could always go So there was a bundle of different things, but that gap and a need in the market and a feeling that if we don't do it now, when will we do it? Kind of got me over the hump and got me into at least giving it a go.
Right. And things have obviously progressed significantly since that time. How big is your team at Engage currently?
Okay, well, the team is still pretty small. We've got 6 full-time people. But what we've done is, through various machinations and iterations, built a series of partnerships. So we've got partners in a number of different markets. So that adds another 15 people who are working full-time on the Engage brand.
And did you decide, Mike, to build a team from day one? Like, did you ever consider just being a solo independent consultant?
We always felt it was going to be bigger than that. Yeah, there were times where it wasn't. We always had this sense that there was going to be size and scale to this, and that we could do that, and that's what we wanted to do. Having said that, I don't really want the company business to get massive. I found running the company got in the way of helping clients sometimes, which is one of the reasons why a partnership structure works for us. But yeah, we're always looking to try and do something a little bit bigger than just a solo enterprise.
Because one of the biggest challenges that consultants face when scaling is figuring out how to build a team. How did you approach that? And how did you know when to add new people to the team? Like, you're at 6 now, plus another 15 partners or whatever setup is there. How did you know to start adding like the second person, third person, fourth person? Because often it's like a bit of a chicken and egg, wondering about hiring people and waiting for the next project to come. So what was your approach to that?
Biggest question, I think, is you're scaling a business. As you say, if you wait too long, then you get the business, but you can't get the right people. If you recruit too early, you have a cash flow problem. Bundled around that, I think, was probably one of the most important things that we learned pretty early on, which is it's a cash business. Small businesses are cash businesses. It's not about profit margin. The most important document on your desk is your cash flows forecast. So we took a relatively pragmatic view and we saved up to invest in recruitment. We looked at our future cash and made sure that we could afford somebody based on our future cash flow and then brought them into the team. So we used financial rules quite rigorously to control that. So we weren't bringing someone in and then hoping that we would sell business that they could work on. It was, we've got enough cash to pay this person to do something. And that, I think, that's one of the most important learnings that we have, which is it's all about people. Whether it's as partners or as recruits, the one thing to do is to give ourselves as much time as possible to recruit. Recruiting when you need somebody, and this is what I guess I learned from my corporate days, you're getting to see 2% of the market. You're getting to see who's on the market right there and then. Whereas if you're always recruiting, always looking for the right person, and I know that's not always practical, but you're able to see the entire market. You're able to build network. You're able to find the right people and then maybe bring them on in 6 months' time, 12 months' time when they're ready. So try to keep those principles in line, but also always making sure that we had the cash to support it first. And then a belief that, well, look, if I've got enough cash to pay this guy for the next 6 months, the next 8 months, the next 10 months, we'll bring some business in that time. Because if we don't bring business in there, we're going to be dead anyway.
I think that's really great advice, Mike, because I share that with many of our clients as well. They should always be building their bench, right, ahead of time. Because, you never know what's going to happen and it puts you in a position of power. For you, what was the first hire that you made?
First hire we made actually was a very junior person. One of the key learnings that we found here in terms of leverage was how to take, having worked for a different consultancy where relatively senior consultants did pretty much everything. The very first hire we brought in was to get somebody in to do all of the stuff that was distracting me and my business partner from high value tasks.
Can you give us some examples of that? Like, what did that actually look like?
Main things, bookings, going back a few years. So booking stuff up, following up with clients on relatively small details, tidying up PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what your business has been like, Michael, but we get through oodles and pages of PowerPoint. And you can spend an enormous amount of time just tweaking into it and perfecting products. Yeah. And getting people to do that, getting someone who can just go off and find some details ahead of a client pitch, go and research this client, go and research this person, taking away stuff that would take you an hour away, knowing that my most valuable time was selling and my second most valuable time was delivering, and therefore anything else had to be lower value. So the first area was, rather than trying to bring on a high value, big hitting consultant type, which would be expensive and therefore put stress on us, we're saying, actually, firstly, what we'll do is leverage my time and leverage the time of my partner by sucking away lower value tasks. So you effectively create more high value consulting time.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, right? That's like the low hanging fruit. Just find those points of leverage and really squeeze as much as you can out of them.
And then keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You get a lot of creep on that. You suddenly find yourself doing stuff that I really shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Somebody else can do this.
For sure. So, Mike, you've worked with some global powerhouses as clients, especially once you started your own consulting business. How did you get those first appointments and meetings with them? While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Okay, so there's been 2 phases, I guess, in our business development world. The first was luck, courage, and networking, and the second was marketing. Our first couple of clients came from a network. As I said, I've been consulting in and around Asia for a couple of years, and while we obviously didn't portray our various contracts with our previous employer in terms of approaching clients, people move on to different jobs and to different companies, and I think we were lucky enough to have a good reputation, which pulled us into a number of new clients. We worked hard on trying to get referrals as well. But I must admit, at the beginning, we weren't very good at that. We, again, come from a relatively large established business which already had those connections and introductions. We were based in the Asia business. The head office was in Europe. They were knocking on the doors of some of the big head offices, and the European business was picking up referrals out of that. So one of the things that we looked hard at was, okay, how do we get people? How do we find ways of knocking those doors down? And part of it was about reputation. Part of it was about networking. And then we got into marketing, started taking our marketing serious. For a company which consults and advises on marketing, it took us a long time to get there, Michael. But we realized that we needed to build a brand and we needed to get out there and we needed to make people interested in us so that we weren't just another consultant knocking on the door.
And Mike, how are you doing that? Like right now, what's working best for you to approach prospecting and building your consulting pipeline of clients?
I'll be honest, it's a big work in progress. At the heart of the marketing lies content. For good or bad, enjoy writing. And apparently I'm okay at it. And we wrote a book. Before that, I started writing a regular blog. I've continued to do that ongoing and have tried to prioritize that wherever I can. Mm-hmm. And those 2 things really form the heart of what we do. The blog brings continuity and brings high-value leads. We got into Coca-Cola in Asia through a blog. Someone just basically, their head of insights, just picked up the phone one day and said, hey, I just read this. That's really interesting. Can we meet for lunch?
How long were you blogging for, Mike, before you started seeing leads come in from that content?
Getting identifiable leads that you could sit there and say, that was something like that Coca-Cola example. That took about a year.
Okay.
And one thing I would say is, blogging is not a quick fix. But on the other hand, just get it. If you're thinking content, just get out there and start, because the first few blogs, nobody will read them anyway. Mm-hmm. So don't worry too much. And once you start writing, you start reading more, and I found that it starts flowing. But it took a year before we got anything serious. Though what we did start seeing was that that's kind of hard in incoming leads. They're just arriving on the doorstep. We also started finding that the doors were easier to open. that you would be approaching what you thought were cold contacts and they'd heard of you.
Right.
Or that having published a book, for example, was a great way to knock down a door.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, then slowly building up the databases and the mailing lists so that as we start focusing on another wave of business development, we've got a whole bunch of people through LinkedIn or through having subscribed to various of our blogs. We know that they are at least aware of us. We have some reference point, which is they kind of liked something at some point. And that gives, I think that gives salespeople confidence. It gives me as a salesperson confidence. These people clearly have heard of me and liked something. Otherwise, they wouldn't have subscribed. So selling is about emotion. So it gives you a good deal of confidence. And it does make it a lot easier. I think when people feel that you're not just another salesman, you're the guy who wrote that thing that they like, even if they don't quite remember exactly what it was, but there's a vague acknowledgement that you're a pretty good guy. You gave stuff for free, right, and I quite liked it. I must have liked it, otherwise I wouldn't be on your email list. I think it just softens that and gets through that first meeting. Once you get in the first meeting, then obviously you're on your own. You've got to go and do your stuff. So it took a while, but now it's right at the heart of pretty much everything. And it's driven an extra conference business, which we didn't really have before. We're now getting regular paid conferences from conference organizers, but also from clients. And that's driven that. And we've had plenty of pretty big clients coming in, literally just writing and saying, I've read this and I liked it. Can we talk about this?
Well, Coca-Cola is not a small fish, though certainly it's working for you, right?
Yeah.
So Mike, you are a marketing and a sales guy. If you were just, knowing what you know now, if you were just starting your marketing, whether you're starting a new business or just an existing consulting business, but you weren't doing much with marketing. So if you were just starting right now, knowing what you know, what strategy or tactic would you utilize with the idea that your goal was to start generating leads as quickly as possible? Would it be content? Would it be something else? Like, what would you do if someone said, hey, Mike, okay, you're tasked with bringing in more leads for the business? What would you start with?
Just one thing to say, probably to our detriment, we thought we were good at marketing and sales because we'd done marketing and sales in a consumer goods environment,
right,
where the world is completely different. So you're marketing to consumers, first of all, and which is quite different to be marketing. And secondly, you're selling to ongoing customers. So if you work for Procter & Gamble and you're selling to Walmart, you're not selling from scratch. You're not walking in every day and hoping that they're going to buy something. You have an ongoing relationship and they're going to buy stuff, right? Your Walmart are not going to do without Procter & Gamble. So it's quite a different relationship. And I think that blinded us at the beginning because we kind of thought we knew sales and marketing and took a little bit of time to realize that when you're in startup land and you're in B2B land, you need to think differently.
Right.
But having said that, I personally would still go back down a content route because the point being is there are two things that are required. One is something that's going to differentiate you from every other consultant who is banging the door. I mean, having been in corporate, knowing what it's like and knowing how terrible most cold calling emails are, you just delete. So content has a number of different dimensions and advantages to it. Firstly, if you use that with us in a B2B environment, targeting relatively large corporate, LinkedIn is a great place to publish content. So you can get out there, you can get awareness if you're prepared to wait and build it consistently. It builds awareness, but it also gives you the opportunity to build point of difference, to mark yourself out and to talk about your point of view, talk about some practical stuff, really build that image. It also helps with the sales effort. Obviously, you're building mailing lists, but you're also building a database of stuff that you can mail to people. And one of the learnings we've had is that all of those blogs can be used again and again and again. They're great for sending to a prospect. They're great for keeping a prospect warm who's gone cold over a few months and you haven't heard anything. So you see something in the press and you say, oh, I'll just flick on that blog I wrote a year ago and say, hey, I thought you might find this interesting. So you've got this constant pile of stuff. The downside is it takes time, but the upside on supporting the sales and marketing is great. The other thing is it's helped the consulting business. It's been a flow of new ideas. To write, you have to read, which means you're aware of what's going on in your marketplace. You're engaging with people who may never be your clients, but through conversations on LinkedIn, you have a spark of an idea that turns into a 35-minute conference presentation all works up into a 2-day training program, all from an idea that came from a blog, that came from a thought. And you suddenly said, wow, how come nobody can do that? Why is everyone asking questions? I thought that was really obvious. And before you know it, you've got a new product. So it's a way for me of engaging with the topic area in a way that is quite creative, as well as engaging with an audience, as well as creating sales support systems. So for me, it works really well. The howevers are, it takes time. And don't think that an outbound marketing system is the answer. It takes a lot of grind, a lot of waking up on a Monday morning and thinking, I don't know what to write, and say, yeah, I know, but I just have to write, because you have to just be there consistently to eventually find people cutting through the noise, right? I don't know, Michael, I don't know what your LinkedIn feed's like, but mine is jammed full of tons of stuff. And somehow you've got to get to the stage where people are thinking, you know what, I like what Michael writes. I'm getting cut through on that. And that just takes time. But that's where I would go.
I completely agree on that. It certainly does take time. It takes commitment. The benefits, the rewards, the dividends can be significant, but it certainly does require the energy and effort and the consistency. So last question here for you, Mike. What would you say, looking at the experience you've had building your consulting business and knowing other consultants as well, what is the most common mistake that you see consultants making that maybe you yourself made in the early years, and that looking back, you know that if you hadn't made that there would have been greater growth or a greater impact? What's just the most common or biggest mistake that you feel you yourself have made in the past?
There's a very long list.
Just one that stands out for you that you think could help others.
I think the most important thing is selling is everything.
Selling is everything.
Is probably the answer, because behind that, there are so many mistakes. Mistakes we made in over-engineering our product to make it perfect. When actually you test ride it with a client once and you realize that it's far from perfect, but actually it was still brilliant and it was still light years ahead of anything that the client's ever seen before.
Yeah.
You know, spending time waiting, the ready, aim, fire rules, the ready, aim, and never quite firing because the product's not quite right and we haven't quite got our website's not right. How can we perfect that? Over-engineering everything in our business, I think. And some of that probably came from a corporate world, but I then see it again and again and again. People saying, oh, no, I want to get it right. I've been working on my pitch pack for the last 3 months. And it's like, seriously, dude, just get out there and pitch it, right? You'll learn. It's pretty damn good already. Has it got the core fundamental bits of a pitch pack? Yes or no? Get out there and do it. Because I think you learn by doing, you perfect by doing, but you can waste an enormous amount of time and you need to get out there and sell because you need that cash. So I think that probably sums it all up. Whatever you're doing, if it's not actually getting you in front of a client, question, is that really a priority right now?
That is absolutely great advice. I wholeheartedly believe in exactly that. It's so true. I mean, so many people will find excuses, reasons just to stay comfortable and continue to plan and prepare and think and do everything that they can not to get out there. But ultimately, as you shared so wisely, Mike, right, it's the feedback from the actual clients, from the actual marketplace that will tell us very quickly if we're on the right track or if we're not. And even if we're not, even if we learn that we've made a mistake and there's room for improvement, we're now one step closer to ultimately achieving what we want and getting the result that we want. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here to the Consulting Success Podcast. Really appreciate you sharing a bit of your journey, story, and best practices with us. What's the best way to learn more about your work and to connect with you?
Very, very easy. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place to find me. Or you can email me at mike@engageconsultants.com. So just, reach out and grab me and ping me a note on LinkedIn or on email, and I'll be glad to answer your questions or tell you more about what I did.
Mike, thanks again so much.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.